If it's a C# developer you want, it's a C# developer you'll get. This is the story of how I got hired at an old job I had a few years ago. The technical manager, who ultimately became my boss, was a great guy and was the one who embarked on a course of malicious compliance to get what he wanted. It happened like this. The company was small, about 20 people, and run by a CEO who knew the company's industry but didn't know anything about technology. What she knew was that she had a team of 5 developers and 1 technical manager, and that the company's code was written in the programming language called C#, pronounced C#. One day, her favorite member of the development team quit, whom she regarded as their foremost expert on C#. To the technical manager, this was an enormous opportunity. He had 4 other developers who knew C#, but what he was missing was an expert in database design and administration. The company processed a huge volume of data, and he knew enough about databases to know that theirs were a mess. The same data had to be recorded in multiple places and was always getting out of sync. Operations that should have taken a few seconds would run for minutes, etc. He didn't want to replace the departed employee with another developer. He wanted a database expert. But the CEO wouldn't hear of it. Cue malicious compliance. Somehow he got a description of the person he actually wanted into the hands of a recruiter, who found me. I had over 10 years of experience in database development and administration at that point, but had never touched a line of C# code in my life. The technical manager had a skills assessment he was giving to all candidates for the job, which was 100% database questions. There was a huge, boldface warning at the top, which I found extremely odd, stating, "These questions are extremely difficult. It is unlikely you'll be able to answer them all. You may not be able to answer any. Do not feel any pressure to attempt questions you find too difficult, as these results are not related to the position." I was told I had 20 minutes to work on it. Well, I finished it in about 2 to 3 minutes. The questions were all actually very easy, and walked back into the office of the technical manager to ask if I was missing something and what this was all about. He gave me the shush gesture and motioned me back into the conference room. Then he explained. His office was adjacent to the CEO's office, so he couldn't talk in there. The warning was something he'd been forced to put on the test after a recruiter, who apparently had initially been just as confused as I was, had called the CEO to ask why they were giving a database assessment for a C# position. He'd had to play it off to the CEO as, "Well, wouldn't it be good to know if we happen to find a C# developer who is comfortable with databases, too?" He explained all the backstory described above, and then we talked for about 30 minutes about databases. C# didn't come up. The job sounded really interesting and would be a chance for me to make an enormous positive difference. At the end, he said, "Okay, you're perfect. I'm going to recommend you for the position. But first you have to talk to the CEO. Remember, when you talk to her, you're a C# expert. Got it?" I was worried, but I thought, worst case, I get caught and don't get the job. Best case, I can really help this company. Into the CEO's office I went. After an exchange of pleasantries, she said, "So, what would you say is your number 1 technical strength?" I made a thoughtful face and said, "Well, it's hard to say. I have skills in a lot of different areas. But if I had to pick one, I'd say probably C# programming." Her face lit up. "Ah, fantastic," she said. "That's exactly what we're looking for." We talked for a few more minutes about salary requirements and start dates. I said I could start in 2 weeks. And at the end she offered me the job. That night, I stopped on the way home and bought a book about C#. I think it was literally called something like, Learn C# in 14 days. By the time I started 2 weeks later, I knew enough C# to do my job. As the technical manager had said, there was an enormous amount of database redesign to do. So the C# programming was maybe 10 to 20% of my time. I was able to get those database jobs down from minutes to seconds like they should have been. And the CEO was so impressed she never even questioned my background. I continued to learn C# on the job. And no one ever found out I hadn't been a C# expert all along. I will quote my programming teacher from 25 years ago. I know these programming languages. And the others I can fool you that I know. For a while there it sounded like you were describing a position in the dev team I work in. Database is a nightmare, and because it works good enough, it's never been improved. My favorite story so far from this job was when I brought one report's runtime down from minutes to seconds, and an employee of one of the customers complained that it was too fast. So it must be doing something incorrectly. Love this story. Nothing can screw up a project more than a top manager who has no idea how the project actually works. You can't do a solid application design with everyone having just the same skill set. As a recruiter, I can tell you right now, this type of hiring manager is an absolute breath of fresh air. It takes guts to go outside the wire, especially when it's the CEO. But a non-technical person dictating what a technical hire needs to be is the absolute worst. Good for your for finding a workaround that benefit the team more than the ego. That's a great story. But there is no chance I would take that job if the management is this messed up. Also, redesigning a database like that is not trivial. The entire codebase needs to be modified to accept the new table design. Everything about this job makes me want to run away. Awesome story. I bow to your knowledge of SQL and the holy databases. I've been a C# developer for 11 years. I've literally built systems that allow 30-year-old applications to talk to modern ones. I also know enough SQL to know I should not be allowed to touch the databases. If it is any more than get me this information out of this table. I'm not joining tables for any amount of money. I'm looking for a DBA. I just don't think that way. That is the problem with the tech industry. Never enough thought to actual database design and development. Everyone is looking for a DBA who sits and watches a screen and makes sure the backup runs. SMH. Spent 20 years in database world and am not qualified to be a DBA or programmer. Rolling on the floor, a laughing, 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 rolling on the floor, a laughing. The company was small, about 20 people, and run by a CEO who knew the company's industry but didn't know anything about technology. Oh wow. But do I love these. Wow, I went to uni and still don't have a full grasp of C#. Mind lending me your book? I continued to learn on the job. And no one ever found out I hadn't been an expert all along. Basically every dev in every job lol. I've been screaming for a DBA for 10 years now. We're constantly having performance issues due to software developers thinking they know what they are doing with fancy queries. I'd settle for a contractor coming in for a few months to a year to go through all our SQL and make recommendations. I can write queries. I can't promise you they will be efficient queries because I'm not a DBA and I've only learned enough SQL to be dangerous. As my family says, don't let your qualifications get in the way of your aspirations. Love this story. I did a Bachelor of Computer Science at uni. I mostly work as a commercial diver as it generally pays more. I don't let companies know I have it. Anyway, one of the companies I worked at was implementing a custom maintenance system. Was a web-based system so we could log in and record stuff remotely. Company they bought the system off basically got their base system and supplied a guy to adapt it to our needs. They were quoted 8 months. At the 3-month mark, the CEO got wind of my degree and him being unhappy about a process he had no concept of. Fired the guy implementing the system. He then came and told me I would be doing it in my downtime. I had a look at the system and where it was going. Then I drew up a quote. I then handed it to the CEO, said that it was unfeasible to do in my downtime and that I would have to do 50% diving, 50% implementation, and that way it would take me roughly 3.5 years. I also informed him that as it was outside my job description, he would technically be hiring me as a contractor for the 50% and knocking me back part-time. He went ballistic at me. Screamed at me for a good 5 minutes. I explained that was what was involved and that's what it would cost. The implementation was at a higher rate than my dive salary, as this wasn't exactly my field and I would be spending time learning while I implemented. I then suggested they hire back the poor guy they sacked. Out of spite, they scrapped the whole program, which left them nearly $200,000 in the hole. I left there not long after. My friend there said they have been through 4 maintenance systems since then. It's amazing that to get a reasonable job that suited you only took reading a book to seal the deal. Great MC. I've said for decades now that after you learn your first dozen programming languages, the rest are just syntax. Cheers for that technical manager for knowing how to get what he needed, not what management wanted. As another DBA supporting C# developers. Hi. The biggest PITA for our job. IMHO. Is all the people who have databases that are absolute crap but won't hire a DBA because it's just a database. How hard could it be? Quote. Thankfully my current boss is not one of those. But several other department heads are, and I itch to get my hands on their databases. This is good. No one was screened over. Company happy. You're happy with a paycheck. Nice wholesome story. As a C# developer that's now in database management, learning that on the job. I applaud you for that one. It's great to see that I'm not alone. Did you have any programming experience? Pretty cool story.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.